Hello and welcome back after 9 months. I checked. The last video that I made was 9 months ago and it would have been in Kyoto, and a lot has occurred since then. So I should start with, if I'm back and you are curious enough to click on this video, immediate context of that. So where am I back? I am still in Japan. I'm actually in my old stomping grounds, or one of them, because I lived in Chiba to begin with, then I went to Ibaraki, and then I ended up in Kyoto for a while. And so I have returned to Ibaraki. That's where I'm stationed now, and I really like it. Perhaps most of all because the cost of living here is fantastic, so that's really good. But letting you know that I'm back is obviously just the small piece of the story, and that I will be making videos again. It's what have I been doing with this time, this last 9 months? Anybody who would have left off with me would have known that I had spent time in Thailand, where I had gone for a career change, not embittered by teaching English or anything, but just that it would be great to do something else. And if that were to somehow dovetail together again with whatever else I was doing, more than happy to do so. What I'd done is I'd gone to a coding boot camp in Tokyo, and it focused on like whatever number of languages. And from that, I determined that I am not a very good programmer. I really wanted to give it my best shot. Like, I think you don't know until you try, so that's worth exploring. But then, importantly, when I went on that mission, I discovered that in terms of project management, I am a more natural fit. I love communicating with people. I love ideas. I love concepts and working on things like that. And so I had gone from that boot camp to start my own business, and it was to build this first product that I had in mind. And to give you the really short version of that, it was that I couldn't see, after I was developing this project for a while, if it was differentiating itself enough from the other competitors in the landscape at that time. And I'm very grateful to, always the people who will tell me the truth. Don't tell me about the world as I wish to see it. Tell me how it actually is. And definitely a mentor of mine and somebody that I've worked closely with, especially over the last couple of years, is my middle brother. He's an incredible entrepreneur, and he wants me, of all people, to succeed. And he said, I cannot see how you are different enough and that you're not just going to get squashed by current competition for what it is that you're trying to do in terms of the literal technology, and then as well for the team size that I had. So where I had left off was what to do with the team, because I'll fill you in on that if maybe you didn't even see any of those videos, and so you're like, wow, you suddenly showed up again. This is all news to me. It was only myself and one other individual that had moved to Thailand to build that product, and definitely with a low level of experience. I mean, I was just out of the coding boot camp. The gentleman that I worked with was a bit of a prodigy. He had only finished, but he was very good. Still, it's two people who are new to the industry trying their best, and that can yield a lot of great information, but it's still the beginning of your expertise, and so there's only so much you can do in terms of your ambition. And so I left off. This is the key moment where I'd come back to Kyoto. That friend who had worked with me until that point said that he was going to go to China to teach math, which is really cool. I think that would be, I love adventures, that's why I'm in Japan again. That's why I was in Thailand. And so I really was stoked to hear that that was something that he was going to do, but it left me as a one-man, non-technical founder. So I needed to find out, how can I keep moving this along? Because I really wanted to. It wasn't that the product had to stay the same, but I was just so enjoying the process that I thought I would continue with it. So I reached out, and I managed to get in contact with an individual who is very technically minded and who is now my business partner and CTO in the company. And he has about 28 years, probably arriving soon to 29 years of experience in development with everything. Like, he had gone from web design into the back end, into machine learning, that especially suited him for going into a CTO role because nobody can throw malarkey at him. And he'll be able to discern whether it's smoke and mirrors or if the way the person is communicating is actually accurate. So he's an incredible business partner to found the whole thing with. And we had discussed, what are we going to do with this product if we don't see it as viable in its current form? How do we pivot away from this, is the usual jargon. And that led me to brainstorming on a product I'd thought about actually going into that Tokyo Bootcamp, which was that I saw these generative AI models being very practical for stories and creating stories and for authors. And I'd only seen the market target mostly that anyone was aware of, professional authors. So that if you were looking to write a book, you could use some of these new services that were coming out to help you write your story. And where I saw an opportunity and also sort of emerging in again to something I'm more familiar with was the potential for these large language models and story creation to have a really positive impact on childhood reading development. And I loved when I was a kid, and maybe you had too, I always wonder if people had read these same books, the choose your own adventure style. So you'd finish reading several pages and then at the bottom of that page would be options. Like, do you want to do this action as though you were the character in the book? Or do you want to take this action? And that would guide the story, and you felt almost as though you were constructing it because it was based on your choices. And so this sparked the idea that wouldn't it be cool if you had like a choose your own adventure style story that you could do that would allow children to have an impact on the stories. And that's where it was all born. That's where Dreambook, as I've called it, has come from. And a lot has gone into it since then. Actually, that original sparking idea has been left out of what you would call our MVP, which is the minimum viable product that you can bring to market. But the essence of children creating their own stories and parents having a tool that they would be able to tailor the stories that they wanted to read to their children has remained true. And it has been for that project that I have dedicated my time over the last 9 months. And then it goes on to what does that entail exactly? You know, you could go in so many directions at that point, but I think the most practical was I had Andrew now, that's the CTO, and our ambition can increase because just with his participation in the project, we can do so much more. But then again, to put it all on his shoulders would be excessive. I'm totally fine with, I can conceptualize this thing. I can actually talk from front to back everything that I want to go in, and I can provide concept documents for each piece of the application. But again, to repeat the point, it would be a lot for one person to do, and it required a lot of specializations actually. So what we then went on to do was to broaden this team. And that meant finding out where can you hire people from and how long does it take to find meaningful contributors to what it is that you're doing. So I'm gonna go on here. I haven't spoke to the camera now for 9 months, which is crazy. So I won't spare you any details. The first thing that we decided, again, according to my feeling and also the research that I did on the topic, most importantly of all, was that I wanted to target iOS, and I wanted to target specifically the iPad, because you have a generation of kids now that are very much these iPad children, and much of what goes on there is passive. And so it's almost a foregone conclusion that a parent is going to reach for an iPad at some point for their child to entertain themselves. And I thought, if all children are focusing in terms of a technological object, all their attention on the iPad, could we transform this into a more positive experience for them? And that's where all the kids are anyways. So I wanted to do the iPad, go with iOS. That means that you need iOS developers. So we went about building our team, And I'll jump around a little bit in the timeline here, but we've really come to consolidate that team recently. We have an incredible lead iOS engineer. He's got 10 plus years experience. He's actually based out of Vancouver, which is kind of cool, you know, my old stomping ground other than on Vancouver Island where I was born. And we have 2 other support engineers for him to work with. So we've recently onboarded them. That brings that team up to 3. So that's one aspect that you need. This is now the team building portion of the video where I can tell you about who comprises the entire team. So that's the iOS. But then we determined that very obviously, or maybe not so, it seems obvious after the fact, that the way we want to do this now, rather than how I had done it before, was to have the AI models that we use be in-house. So I know a lot of people have heard this and they get a little bit confused when I say that, so I'll explain it. I think this is worth understanding to get the full color of what I'm describing. When we started, and the product was called Fantasai, this is the first thing I worked on since retired, we were using the OpenAI's API, which basically means that you can use ChatGPT's generative AI models by bridging them or linking them to your application that you have. So it looks as though it's your application, but when it comes time to actually generate something with the AI, you're using their service. Now, it's convenient in one way because it allows you to immediately start building whatever it is that you want to build, and everything's been tweaked and taken care of. Now, what are the downsides of that? Well, it's not yours, and so if they ever make significant changes or downtimes on their servers or whatever it may be, you are beholden to that fact. So don't like that. And then there's the fact as well that it can be incredibly expensive because you have no control over their price points. Obviously, they're making it cheaper and cheaper, and I saw that even within the time that we were using their API. But still, it's expensive as compared to if you had it in-house and you had your own models. So what we thought we would do is have our own models. So there's something here I want to make the distinction of, again, for clarity, that if you're not too familiar with the AI mumbo jumbo, is that some people, when they hear me say that, are like, how do you have the resources to build your own AI model? I don't, and you don't need them. So what I'm talking about in this case is that you get companies out there, for example, like Alibaba, of all companies, kind of like the Asian Amazon. You have DeepSeek, and these companies have released their pre-constructed AI model as open source. And they have this license associated with it commercially that's called the Apache 2.0 license. And it means that you can pull that AI model off of the shelf and they welcome you to use it in your own applications and commercialize it. And this means that you have an in-house model. You never had to build it from the ground up, and that you can control it much more because it is you who are tweaking it and then making your granular decisions about the exact results that you're going to get from it. And that's what we've done. But making that choice means that, well, I might be very interested in AI models, and I've read a lot about them, and I'm understanding more and more every day. It is not my specialization. It's not a career that I've gone down for many years. And so having someone who are a dedicated engineer for that makes a lot of sense. So we have on our team the iOS, or the development team in that regard. Then we have our ML team, the machine learning team. And you could get one person to do this. So you have sort of the models themselves, and then you have the infrastructure that those models interact with. These are a lot of work, each of them. And so what we ended up getting was an ML operations engineer, and that's the person who builds the infrastructure that's going to use the AI. And then you have the machine learning engineer who is dedicated to getting the best results from your model. And it is more than just prompt engineering, but it does amount to some portion of that. But they go on to control the weights, the temperatures, some more of this jargon that gives you the exact results that you're going to see from the AI when you generate something. So that's our ML team, that's the iOS team, and then there's other really important people that are involved. So for example, we have our backend engineer. So this backend guy, he builds the infrastructure for the actual iOS application, which we could ask him to do some of the MLOps backend infrastructure, but again, it's so much that it made sense for him to do that dedicatedly and with his specialization, and he's killing it. He's absolutely killing it. Then we have what are you going to do without an art department? So we ended up looking around, interviewing a lot of people, and we've ended up with an incredible art director. And why is he so wonderful? Well, when we looked at everyone, of course, the first thing that you see is their artistic style. It stands out if someone's been a career illustrator, a career artist. They're going to develop a kind of style over that time. And this gentleman is amazingly suited to Dreambook because he has this perfect child aesthetic. It's something that whenever I look at it, I find myself enjoying it in the same sort of way I might be entertained as a kid. I love the vibrancy. I love the minimalism, I think you might say, about his art. It's just large, easy to understand. And he's had a really decorated career. I mean, he's worked with, for example, I always like to toss out this little factoid. We have so many different interactive icons within the application, within Dreambook. And he created the original emoji suite. So just all of the emojis for Facebook, which I thought was very cool. That's interesting. And he was actually a part of the early development team for TikTok as well, which I found very interesting. And then it's a whole myriad of other companies that he has worked with and still does, because anyone who's working with us is splitting their attention between what they're doing with us and then whatever full-time or part-time that they work on as well. So that's our art department. And then we have very importantly, we have our chief marketing officer. His name's Gabe, and he's incredible. And he's done the foundational work that you need for a marketing and monetization plan. And I'm very proud to say that the way we've approached the product now makes no assumptions. So we may come up with a concept, of course, that's necessary, but then we test this through research. I was thinking, like, if somebody wanted to start a business, probably a tech business now, I think I could give a lot of very practical, there's no exact path that you're supposed to do it, but in terms of getting the right talent on your team, knowing exactly who you would need, I'm far better about that. Also contracts, in incorporating and building the structure of it, I've had to learn all about different share types, whether you have non-voting, voting, preferred shares for when it comes to investment later on. But anyways, that's a little bit more of my education. It's nothing to do with the team. So we have Brian there. We have Gabe there as the chief marketing officer. We have our quality assurance. We actually will be bringing in a second person for that very soon. So we have quality assurance, which is incredibly important because you don't want to give your app on over to the App Store, which is where it will first appear, because we're not doing Android. As I said, we're doing iOS, and have it not work. So we have our QA as well. And in total now, the team has grown to 11, and I believe we're going to finally, after months and months of interviewing and incorporating people into the team, we're going to top out at 12 people. So now that we have this concept, we have a design cycle. I'll take a brief moment there. It's fun. I find it fun. This is what my life isn't totally devoured by currently. So the way we do it is that I create a concept for a module in the app, and we've separated the app into 10 modules, and a module represents a significant experience or a major feature in that app, in the app. So I do a concept for it. After I do a concept, I meet with the leadership team. We get together and review that document, and a part of the leadership team is our art director. And he's present in the meeting to give feedback, let us know what's working, what won't work if he transcribes this, translates this into his art. We finish off that conversation, and then it's handed off to the art department. So Brian goes away with it. He does all of the UI. He does all of the icons. We go through a bit of a feedback stage there with him. And then from the art department, it goes on to development. Development then is allocated whatever period of time to finish that module. And then from art department, it goes over to quality assurance. And then ever and always, this cycle will repeat. And it's going well. It's finally at this point, I think, of having the concept. Well, first, I mean, it depends on where you want to originate it from. First going to the bootcamp, I suppose that's the career switch, developing fantasai for a year. But then at the point where I said, okay, let's build this other team. Let's switch to iOS. Let's build Dreambook. That, I think, is this critical point where I then measure from how much we've accomplished and where we are now, that we have test versions of it that you can finally load this up on your iPad and interact with it. And it's an incredible feeling. It really is. Like, I love this idea of like pulling from your imagination something into reality. There's like a cool quote in the book I was reading recently. As a non-technical founder, I'm trying to read a number of books that would complement the fact that you are non-technical to allow you to communicate a bit better with your technical team. And one of the quotes was from Walt Disney, and it said, "It's so much fun doing the impossible." And that's really what it feels like, because it would be no exaggeration to say that to have gotten as far as we have at several many milestones, it is a miracle. You're not supposed to be able to do this. You're not supposed to be able to be an AET for 8 years and then be able to meet somebody who wants to build a product. You're not supposed to then be able to recruit this many people. You're not supposed to have any kind of progress like we've so far enjoyed. And it's amazing. So you need a good plan. I've given you kind of the development cycle, but you need a plan, obviously, to shoot for when you're going to release. And for us, it's fluctuated a little bit as we've created our design cycle that we have, and then where we'll be in it, depending on the work that gets done. But we've settled in now, I would say, second week of October. So give or take, it's like roughly 6 months from now, or the end of October. You just have to allow for these things because you don't know what is unforeseen, which might slip you up along the way. But we plan for that. Even knowing that those things are going to happen, we still believe that we will finish at this time, mid-October. And then the age range that we'd like to use, again, this is research driven. That's something interesting that I could share, and it was kicked off by our marketing officer. I'd never heard of these services before. Again, why would I? It was outside of my experience. These services are designed, one of them is called MTurk, another one is called SurveyMonkey, where if you're developing anything, it could be a tech product, it could be a business that sells, headphones. You can create a survey on either MTurk or SurveyMonkey, and you pay an amount of money, and then you can guarantee yourself a number of respondents, because people are actually paid to go onto the service and then fill out, honestly, take that with a grain of salt, but honestly, their opinions regarding the surveys. And now you actually have market research into what it is that you're building, because timing is incredibly important. And that's something that I believe that we have, because, well, there were just not these generative models. You could not have children creating their own stories before. Not only timing, but I think a lot of people are so excited about creating this thing that they do it strictly from the heart. And that'll take you a long way, but you're going to run into a lot of obstacles, which were your misunderstanding the people that you were trying to get this in the hands of. And you get rid of that whole experience by doing market research. So we've done research with the parents. That's an incredible thing about SurveyMonkey, is that you're able to say, we want this survey to be distributed to parents. We want it for parents of age groups between here and here. You could even say like number of kids in the house, whatever it is that you want. You can target North America specifically, whatever it may be. So that has really transformed what we're capable of in terms of creating something that we don't think, but instead we know is according to what our audience is telling us that they would like. So it would be hard to express. I think whatever I would say would fail to, really embody the kind of excitement that I have for this. But I've been working on it, not just the team, obviously, but the actual concept and the design of it, because I am the ideas guy. There's a great, reel out or meme out right now, just talking about the effect that AI has had to buoy up these people who are non-technical but then can move much further because they have this incredible resource assisting them now. So that's what I'm doing, and it's been incredibly helpful to me. So I've been building, I've been recruiting. I'm very, very excited with what the team has done so far. And a major milestone for us certainly has been that I don't believe after we make one more hire that we will expand the team any further. And I'm very happy to do so. I think the whole benefit of a startup is that you have agility, that you're quick, that you're fast, that you're flexible. Even the way in which I do our interview process is unorthodox. Like regularly you would take, you might have your first week of interviews and you wait for them all to be done. And then you go to a second week and then you wait for them all to be done. And then you might make a final decision. The way that we've adjusted it now is that if I meet someone and I have a really impactful conversation with them and they seem like a great fit, I invite them as soon as possible following that interview, like in the interview itself, to their second round where they would meet our CTO. And then from there, we make our decision very quickly. If you have a team that goes much over 12 people, it gets harder to have this kind of like personal, immediate touch. And well, I don't want to micromanage. I don't want to have my hands on everything. I do like to be aware of them. And I think it gets much harder to be able to be aware of everything when your team gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it becomes impersonal. And I really want at least the first product that we make to have this very bespoke and human element to it. That's been very important to us as well, is that AI is, as you would expect, when any new creative medium comes into existence, it's greeted with suspicion at best, and at worst, it's treated like an absolute aberration. And this is true every single time we've done this. When the camera was created, that stole your soul. When digital photography was created, that was the end of art. When Photoshop was created, that was the end of art. And now it's AI's turn for it to stand in that same spotlight. But it is our core belief that it is something to enhance and not replace creativity. I've actually done an article recently, and this is something where I was like, this is sad. It's like, it's a complete misunderstanding of what you're doing or not really acting purposely, where Hayao Miyazaki is kind of famously said that AI is an insult to life. And then Hayao Miyazaki has now, it was recent, it was just this like flash in the pan kind of meme thing, but as of OpenAI releasing their GPT-4o image generator, everybody went on a rampage creating all of these Ghibli-esque pieces of art for anything. And you can imagine that old Hayao was not totally happy about that going down. But it made me think about it, as I say, I wrote an article about it. And when I read what he had to say, it's that what he values in art is the human experience. It's that when you see whatever art is done is a representation of that human's experiences, where with AI, it is not doing that. It's just this experienceless machine that is generating something based on information gathered, information out. So this is the result. But where I might intercede, where I might intervene and suggest something, is to say that we all create things, even with AI, in the way that he values. So because you create with AI, it doesn't supersede the fact that you're creating with AI with your personal experiences. Now, it enhances them in a way that was not possible before. So people say, oh, the art has lost value. But what it does is it unlocks expression. And especially for children, if you think that a child, when they were 1 or 2 or 3 years old, let's say 3 onwards, maybe 3 to 5, what are they really capable of in terms of art? Not that much. It's really beautiful, and there's all sorts of fascinating studies about images that they create are actually the first forms of storytelling for them. But they're not that impressive. I mean, they're impressive in terms of what's neurologically occurring for them and as a part of their early development. But this tool would then allow for their personal expression to be reflected back at them in a really interesting way. You would see 3-year-olds creating art like they never imagined they were capable of. And then, as kind of a final thought that is connected to this idea of accomplishing what you may not feel you were capable of before, that's a really important, again, founding concept to what we're doing, is that, well, we want everybody to make stories with this. We want mom to make stories with, we want dad, brothers, sisters, all of that. Perhaps most of all, we would like people or children to make stories and feel a sense of authorship in them when they didn't think that they could. And it can be the difference of that one experience that changes the whole course for someone. All they needed to do was to believe that they were capable of it, and then they push past it. You see this like in really interesting ways express itself in athleticism with world records that are set, for example, with races, where a record will be held at whatever number for ages and ages and ages. And then somebody, some great soul, will exceed that record. And then shortly thereafter, a whole bunch of people do. And you're wondering, why might that be? And I think it's in relation to the belief that people now have that it's possible. So this is something we want to address. Like, to leave you with one final piece of research that we had done into what are the problems affecting younger kids in their development. It's around, well, it's not around, it is literally, it's called the decline by 9, and that when kids reach 9 years old, it's kind of like a disillusionment with reading. It's become too challenging for them to keep up with, and you see this great split where it's the vast majority, especially boys, who will no longer go on to do personal reading, and at great cost to their development. There's our reading is a simulated reality. That's why when you meet a child that seems wise beyond their years, it's very often because they've read. And it is true that our brains have not difficulty, it's like a feature of them that we have difficulty discerning the difference between reality and imagination. And that's kind of on purpose, because it allows us to visualize something and practice it in the absence of the experience itself. And so that's what reading does for young children. They can read, simulate experiences in their head, and then when you meet a kid who has read so much, they seem wise beyond their years, because in some sense, to their brain, they've lived far more than they have. They've gained far more experience than they literally have, but it's no different to their brain. And as I say, especially true of children, this kind of blur between what is real and not real for them is magical. Your brain's not yet at a point where it is so concretely decided what reality is. And so if you could inspire them, if you could get them creating their own stories, then I think we could have a really positive impact on this decline by 9. So that's another goal that I have, as revealed by the research that we've done for what Dreambook could ultimately become. So this is the lowdown. I'm not sure exactly how long I've gone on for. It's a little odd talking to the camera again, but I always enjoyed it. I still do. I think anyone who does this, or many would agree that it's kind of therapy. It's just good to get your thoughts out. I'll be doing more stuff that is in this same line. I think I can make more creative videos. I don't know if it would be like I did before, because things need to change. I was thinking about the whole experience of my making videos for people who wanted to come over and teach English in Japan. It was incredible to begin with, and I really enjoyed it, and showing off a little bit of the basic lifestyle that I had at that time gave me the largest response from the World Wide Web. But then, practically speaking, you go on, you live your life, and if you continued in that same lane, I think you don't fit in anymore. Like I'm not some new teacher. I'm not experiencing Japan for the first time. I've been here for about, or on and off, but almost succinctly about 10 or 11 years. And it's just like a band that might change your music. To stay an evolving creature, your content's got to change. Your creativity naturally must change. And so I'm happy to do that. And I think even if it only involves these kind of like updating you on what I'm doing with the business and sharing that experience, it could be very exciting, because it already has been, as we go back by each one of these milestones, as we take that step closer and closer to actually releasing something, it'll be great to share them with you. If anyone does still have questions, I'd say like generally about Japan, it's not as though I've either sworn off contributing to that as well. I'd said I'd do that to my grave, but it wouldn't be the center of attention anymore, because it's not really the center of my life anymore. And that's it. I don't think I should go on for much longer. If you'd like to check out the website, it's just our company website for now. We're actually working on the product website because we want to get a beta testers sign-up list. It's chroniclecreations.co. That's the company website, and you can see kind of you see the values of the company, you see kind of the short blurb on what Dreambook is. You actually there get a little bit of exposure to our art director and his art style, because he did all of the graphics that you see there, really, so that's cool. And I think it's fun to see the team as well. So I wanted to share that in case you want to go over there. I hope that you're doing well, and that this was a positive surprise in your day. And thank you so much if you did click on it. It's like, it's amazing to me that people still, check out the videos, even when I was releasing them in Thailand, right? Because I'm definitely no longer talking on the subject of, how do you get your work visa to get over to Japan? And people were still curious. So that means a lot to me. Very grateful for it. I hope that you're doing well. As I said, and I will say, as I said before, and I will say now, hug the ones you love. And I look forward to speaking with you again. That's all for now.